Now we want to switch to politics, and a vote on the Orland Township Board of Trustees has spilled into statewide politics, with even Secretary of State Alexi Janulius weighing in. The board's decision to revoke the lease of its local DMV, one of the busiest in the state, took many by surprise, and it also comes several years after the state closed a number of those offices as well. But advocates say this has been a long time coming. Orland Township's longtime supervisor, Grady, joining me now to talk more about this decision and, again, this somewhat surprising vote. Good morning, Supervisor.
Morning.
I know this was a close vote, 3-2, and you voted against closing the DMV in Orland. What happens now? Because as you know, a lot of people, I mean, there aren't many offices anymore, and a lot of people already hate going there, frankly, so it just makes the existing ones more crowded. So what next?
Well, that's exactly right, Dana. You know, the Lockport facility closed earlier this year, which we saw an influx in Orland. You know, there's been a DMV, or a Secretary of State's office, in Orland since 1994 for over 30 years. The last 5 years have been at the township. The most alarming thing here is that the way the vote happened and how it took us all by surprise. There was no discussion with the Secretary of State's office to see what the plan was, where they could move to next. The facts that they're relying on to break the lease, you know, there were no police calls to the Orland Township facility. That's just not true. There were no safety concerns ever raised with me by any of the staff. There's no memos, there's no emails. So, you know, I question the thoughtfulness of this decision. I don't think it's, I do agree with the Secretary of Giannoulis that this is a disservice to our area without a plan. I know there was a parking issue. I had worked with Senator Bill Cunningham. He had gotten $150,000 in grant money for the township to improve the parking lot. Also, I had talked to Mayor Jim Dodge in the village, and there's a lot directly to the south by the entrance. It's vacant, that's village property, that they were in negotiations to do a purchase lease agreement. The other board members knew that we were working on this problem. And not to say there were issues, but we were working the problem. And I just, again, you know, without a plan, without any discussion with the Secretary of State's office, now our area very much could be left without services for an indefinite period of time.
And when you say area, I mean, we're talking a broad area there, because again, there aren't many DMV offices, you know, left in Illinois. So what does happen next? And do you think maybe in the future you could change a couple of your colleagues' minds and reverse the vote?
Well, I have been in discussion with some of my colleagues just to kind of educate them a little bit more around the topic. You know, I'm hopeful that we can come to agreement. You know, they know about the parking lot issue that we were trying to resolve. You know, I think that at a minimum, we have to get back at the table with the Secretary of State's office. So, you know, to think that they're going to be able to find a new location and build it out in 90 days, I just think it's not thoughtful. You know, we have to have those discussions. You know, we all want bigger, better things. We all know that, you know, anybody that reads the paper knows that the state of Illinois has a budget shortfall too. So to think that they're just going to find money to come to our area to expand a facility overnight is just not realistic, in my opinion.
So it was interesting. You mentioned there were no emails that you're aware of expressing concerns about safety, security, et cetera, but those were claims made at the meeting the other night. So why do you think the vote went to close it down? What's the real issue here?
You know, it's hard to say. You know, I have my suspicions, but you know, when Trustee Duffy says that, that people are wandering around the building, you know, without unchecked, and in the very statement, he says that he was challenged 3 times. So I question their motives. It seems political in nature. Again, you know, without the discussion, without the thoughtfulness, without the consideration of our community, I ask that this be put on a referendum, advisory referendum, on the March 2026 ballot. Then we can hear from the citizens what they want. You know, this is an important service. Again, it's been here in Orland Park for over 30 years. And just to make a snap decision based on anecdotal evidence that apparently their conversations walking around, they've only been in office 60 days, I think is just truly putting the cart before the horse.
Wow, you know, I almost used that analogy exactly a couple minutes ago, the cart before the horse. That is really interesting, too, that they just came into office. And my colleague Audrina pointed out earlier, I mean, there's 3 people making this decision for, you know, tens of thousands of people. So, Supervisor, thanks for joining us. Let us know if indeed it gets on that ballot and becomes, you know, a vote or a referendum vote, because we would like to continue to follow that.
Thank you so much. Have a great day. Stay cool.
Yeah, you as well, and stay safe.